Jay asks, what defines, this is a good question, what defines a successful Clemson season, I'm assuming, for you guys personally, and what about for uh, the outside media? Yeah, I think a successful season is, I think, getting back to double-digit wins
Yep.
and being squarely in the playoff.
Yeah. 10-2, roughly 10-2, back in the ACC championship game, and then obviously a playoff berth. I think a 12-team playoff. I think a program like Clemson, you should expect to make the 12-team playoff.
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, looking at the roster, looking at the talent that is within that program. I mean, I think 10-2 and a playoff berth. I think that's kind of that would spell a successful season to me, and that would say we are now trending back towards the right direction. Right, we may not be there yet. I'm not saying we're going out there and going 12-0 and winning a national title and all this stuff, but we definitely, I think, have to get back to double-digit wins and get a seat at that playoff table again, albeit
Yeah.
a 12-team playoff.
And I think the biggest thing, even beyond the record, is how do you look in those
Yeah.
how does your play on the field reflect that record? Because
That's true. We've won double-digit games in seasons past and looked pretty terrible doing it. So
yeah, so
that's a good point.
Really it revolves around the offense. I mean, does it look more like a explosive, multifaceted offense? Is the pass game, something that players that opposing teams are going to have to respect? Are you going to be able to block, the majority of fronts you face? Like, are you going to be able to, hit explosive, play? Are you going to be able to run the football? So that's kind of like, so like even beyond the record, like if you're 10-2, but you really just kind of relied on your defense and you got bailed out. You played a bunch of close games and you lost, probably the two biggest games on your schedule, especially if you lose to. I mean, you lose to Georgia. I mean, it is what it is. But if you lose to Florida State or NC State, maybe you feel a little bit different. So, yeah, it all depends on what that 10-2 looks like from an offensive standpoint specifically, because that's the side of the football that ultimately is going to determine whether this team is a playoff team or we're going to be another 8-4 team. That's just
absolutely. It's got to look vastly different on the offensive side of the ball this year. It just does. We can't keep spiraling down this offensive black hole that we've been in for what feels like 10 years, but really it's only been 3.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got one more question from Jay. He asks, who do you think is the best route runner on the team? That's a good question. I'm gonna say Antonio Williams. When Antonio Williams is healthy, I think he is just that. I think his feel like is kind of next to nobody else. I think on the team, like his quick change of direction and his there's just not a lot of wasted movement when you watch him run his routes. Like he's very, very deliberate with every single cut he makes. I think he's just he was very well coached from a very young age and into high school. I mean, we know what he was at Dutch Fork. So,
right.
But I think it's Antonio Williams. But Bryant Wesco, I think, was a very good route runner in high school. Would not surprise me if he ended up taking that title. We'll see what TJ. I think TJ Moore was a really good route runner. But I'm going to say Antonio Williams. I think he displays a lot of veteran quality, like NFL, type, route running. He's
Yeah.
just not the most physically gifted. So it's like he's not going to. I mean, he's got good speed, but he's not an elite burner. So like that's kind of that's really his only drawback. But he's very, very, very good at understanding leverage, and he runs his routes with a purpose, and that's kind of where we need to get some of the other guys on this team, up to that level. So
Yeah.
I'm
I
going
would
into there.
I would agree. First guy that came to mind for me was Antonio Williams. I think we sometimes forget how good Antonio Williams was because he
Yeah,
spent all of last season hurt, and it seems like his breakout year was forever ago. Just because of him just not being on the field last year, and when we did see him on the field most recently, it didn't really look like Antonio Williams, right? You could tell that he was still limited. He obviously wanted to be out there, but he was still limited. But definitely think that he's probably got the most crisp routes on the team as of right now. But close second, probably Tyler Brown, maybe a Troy Stellato. He's a pretty good route runner as well. Gets open a lot. Definitely a guy that can create some space. So I'd throw him in that mix as well of guys that can potentially be, really elite kind of route runner guys. So, but yeah, I would agree with you. And Antonio Williams would definitely be my number one right now.